Good morning, everyone. I know there's a lot going on here in the Capitol today, and for those of you who've joined us, today is a day of celebration. I'm Representative Kerry Benninghoff, and behind me and around me are a lot of adoptees born here in the state of Pennsylvania and representing all types of states across our great country. We are here simply to celebrate the passage of House Bill 162, but more importantly, to celebrate the age-old question for many of us of where do we come from? Who are we? As adoptees, many of you know, since 1984, we have not had access to our own original birth certificate information, something any other Pennsylvanian can apply for $20 and receive that information. Vital information, oftentimes in your own medical care, decision-making about your family's medical treatment, and answers to where you came from. Who was your parents? Who was your mom? Who was your dad? Where were you born? It's been a long journey, and many of the people standing behind me have been very helpful and supportive. There are a few shout-outs that I want to do. As a legislator, we oftentimes get the credit, but it was not only my efforts, it was more of my idea to finally give all citizens of Pennsylvania the same equal rights of access to the original birth certificate. Representative Kathy Watson is the chairman of the Children and Youth Committee. She was a game changer. She is ill and not able to join us today. Greg Grassa, her executive director, is here today and has been instrumental. Many of you know we introduced this bill 4 different sessions, only for it to die in the vine in the first 2. Representative Watson got elected as the chair of the Children and Youth Committee, and that was a game changer. I will disclose that Kathy is also an adoptee, an adoptive mother. You can only imagine how that changed the game. I do want to put a shout out to Louise Bishop, former Democrat chairman of the committee, who was also very gracious and helpful, and I thought one of her committee comments in the committee meetings, 2 sessions in a row, hit the nail on the head. House Bill 162 was a bill whose time had come. It was only fair that all Pennsylvanians had equal access. Again, I'd like to thank Representative Conklin, who's the minority chair currently and has been supportive, also lives up my area, and Senator Scarnati and Corman. Senator Corman is my own senator, After long discussions with them, the explanation how generations and generations, like myself, go to physicians and fill out medical histories and constantly have to write non-applicable under every item. It was not until I was close to 30 when I realized that my information was applicable. It just was not available because the government said I couldn't have it. That's when some of the battle began. I would be remiss to not also recognize Carolyn Horde and Priscilla Sharp, stalwart advocates and activists working on this long before I did. They too, due to illness and challenges, are not able to be with us. I believe they're watching us. We love you both, and we thank you very, very much for your steadfast commitment to helping adoptees. Carolyn, by her own situation, was actually an adoptive mother who was fighting to get this information to her for her son. She believed as an adoptive mother he deserved that information, and sadly she lost him before she should able to give that information to him. Also want to take a moment to recognize Amy Knoll. Is Amy up here? Amy, please come forward a moment. As I said, today's a day of celebration. As a legislator, Amy, you're not that much taller. Where are you? Amy's on my staff. When Amy first came to work for me, she was pretty shy, kept to herself and did her business. And when we eventually put her in charge of legislation, I was so impressed on the growth I saw in this young lady and how she took things on tenaciously. The Battle of 162 was not about getting Representative Benninghoff his birth certificate. It was about your birth certificates and your birth certificates. And many now know that this was really an effort by Amy Knoll, and many of you have corresponded with her more than you have me. And I want to publicly thank Amy, because the legislators, we get the recognition, and we are only as good as our staff, and I have been blessed with 4 tremendous, wonderful staff people. And Amy, you did a great job heading this effort up, and I want to publicly thank you, and I know all these adoptees love you very, very much. Thank you. All right, enough of the thank yous at this moment. We're going to move on to the second portion of this, and that is I want you to hear from a few adoptees, and then I'll share some other comments for you a little later on. I'm going to probably butcher these names, I hope not. But Joanna, who will say her last name for you when she comes up, is an adoptee from Pennsylvania, and she's going to share a few thoughts with you. Joanna?
Hello, everyone. I have been an adoptee for 72 years, long enough to gain a cane and a pair of cheaters. But now, finally, I can recognize that I'm a birth child in addition to being an adoptee. And finally, adoptees in Pennsylvania have been recognized for whom they really are. I'm sure that many of us who have received our birth certificate information, thanks to Act 127, have already been reaching out to see if we could find medical history, ethnicity information, and perhaps locate birth family members. My sister Dottie, who is here today, and I were both adopted from different families into a wonderful adoptive family. We shared everything growing up except our bloodlines. Our temperaments weren't similar, nor were our looks. But through adoption, we became sisters. We truly loved our parents who never doubted that we were their children in every way. For years, though, we each wondered who our birth parents were. It's like a puzzle with pieces missing that you can never complete. Who do I look like? What is my ethnicity? Why was I given up for adoption? Didn't they want me? Didn't they love me? Most of us had those questions, which remained unanswered. I got lucky 40 years ago when I became serious about a search, and then 4 years later when my birth mother did as well. We both approached the same agency for information. The person who worked there felt that it was her obligation to help us, and I had a wonderful reunion with my birth mother and her husband and my 6 half-brothers and 1 half-sister. It was great to finally know at least part of the answer. Not so my sister, who didn't learn her original birth name and some of the circumstances of her birth until last year, after sending for her original birth certificate. Not much chance for a reunion for her. Too much time has passed, and family members had died. But at least now she has confirmed her ethnicity and has hopes of finding some cousins, thanks to the miracle of DNA. For many of us, Act 127 was the answer to a prayer, and we have to thank Representative Kerry Benninghoff, an adoptee himself, who sponsored the bill, Amy Noel, and other office members who helped coordinate so much of the work on the bill, and all of the House and Senate members in Pennsylvania who voted to pass it. A thank you also to Governor Wolf for signing the bill into law. With all of our hearts, we thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. As I said, today is truly a day to celebrate. These are not efforts by only one individual. I do want to acknowledge Leader Reed, Dave Reed out of Indiana. Also my good friend. Dave had to put up with a lot of dialogues with me as I begged, borrowed, and tried to persuade to get this legislation through. But a bill can stop a committee. You can get it through committee, but if the leader's office doesn't assist you moving it through, it doesn't happen. Dave, I don't know if you want to say anything. Well, we're very honored to have you here. Again, a great day to celebrate. Our next speaker is Jennifer Espenshade, and I'll let her tell her story. Jennifer?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be standing here as an adoptee with a now unsealed birth certificate. I'm knocking things down with my voice. My entire life, I wondered who my biological parents were, biological relatives. In a few weeks, I will be 56 years old. Thank you. Hold it back. I was adopted when I was 3 months old, and from the time I could understand the concept of adoption, I wondered who I really was. When I was in my early 20s, I went to the agency from where I was adopted, tried to get some information about my biological mother at that point in time, and there was no luck. Without the birth certificate, without having a name, I kind of felt like I was at a dead end. I tried again when I was in my 30s, and again, no luck in finding any of my relatives. Many, many years have gone by, and in December of 2015, I took a DNA test just in the hopes of perhaps being connected to someone out there biologically. A year later, I was connected to a cousin, but again, without my original birth certificate, we were unable to put the pieces together. A year later, I had yet another connection to a cousin. That was this past October. She had a pretty good idea who she thought my biological father was, my father this time. On November 13th, I received my birth certificate in the mail, and I very nervously opened it. I couldn't wait to see. And there, for the first time in my life, were the names of my mother and my father. Now that I had the names, I became one of the best detectives you would ever find. I immediately went on social media, went on the internet, and I was able to find the fact that my father unfortunately had passed away 5 years ago, but I was able to see that I did connect with, or I still had, and I do have, a biological half-brother and sister. My half-brother Bert is here with me this afternoon. I'm thrilled that he is. My journey is going to continue. I'm not finished. I have a big family I'm about to meet when I turn 56 in a few weeks. So again, I want to thank everyone for having this bill passed. Thank you, Representative Benninghoff. And of course to Amy, who did an amazing job. And thank you, thank you. It's a wonderful day of celebration. Thank you.
Boy, I'm glad she doesn't live in my legislative district. I'd be a little bit worried about a challenge. Next, we have Matthew Rinaldi. He has come all the way from Dallas, North Carolina. So give him a good Pennsylvania welcome, because we're glad to have him here. Representative James, thank you for being here. That's another yes vote from the chamber. Come on down.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Rinaldi. I am an adoptee from the Harrisburg area. 43 years ago, I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and given up for adoption. I was actually adopted in the New Jersey area. Ever since I knew about adoption, probably about, when I started becoming interested, or I started becoming interested in adoption, around 12 or 13, you always, as an adoptee, wonder who your birth parents are. I grew up in a very, very loving household. My parents, I never had a need or a want in my life, but there's always that hole. There's always, not knowing where you come from. So, I started a search and wasn't very successful, tried different agencies trying to find out information, and wasn't able to come through with anything. After House Bill 162, there was a little bit more information that was given to me. I was able to find out my parents' biological name. And by finding out my parents' biological name, I was able to reconnect with my biological mother last evening. Actually, last night I was able to reconnect with my mom, so after 43 years. And I had a lot of questions that were answered that as an adoptee, you always wonder, as the previous speakers said, why was I given up for adoption? What circumstances were behind my adoption? And, all kinds of things go through a child's head, a child's mind, even an adult's mind. And I was completely wrong about the reasoning behind it, and now I understand. So a hole that has been within my heart has been sealed finally. And so finally now I have a reconnection with my biological mother, and, for Representative Benninghoff, for Amy, for Joe Ellen at Vital Records that got numerous phone calls from me, because I'm just not a very patient person. So if you tell me that it's going to be a while, I'm going to tell you it's going to be a little bit shorter. So thank you for everything that you've done, for all my friends and family that assisted me in the search, and thank you very much.
Now I know a nice warm place to go visit. I did want to recognize Neil Mulady, Members of the Department of Health, Vital Records are also joined us here today. They get the hard task once we pass legislation. We gave them a year to roll out the regulations, and they were very cooperative with us when I asked them to make a little bit of beautiful changes towards the paperwork, and they acquiesced to that, and I am grateful for that. The next speaker we have is Christy Lotto. Christy is Pennsylvania Adoption Rights Advocate. She's been probably dancing this dance longer than I have, and she's got a lot of hard work, strong emotions involved with this as the rest of us, and we appreciate her taking time to be here to represent their organization as well as her own self. Christy?
Good afternoon. My name is Christy Lotto, and I serve on the board of Pennsylvania Adoptee Rights, otherwise known as PAR. I would like to thank Representative Benninghoff for allowing us to speak on behalf of our organization today. Our board president, Amanda Woolston, helped draft the original version of HB 162 with Representative Benninghoff, which originally, as it was written, restored unconditional access to original birth certificates for adult adoptees. I say restored because we had this right prior to 1985. Adoptees born in Pennsylvania had the right to obtain our OBCs just like any other citizen in the state. I know most of us are here to celebrate this law as a victory for adoptee rights. After all, most adoptees requesting their original birth certificates summaries will receive the full information they're entitled to. But unfortunately, the passage of this bill means that we still don't have unrestricted access to our own information. We still aren't being treated equally under the law simply because of the circumstances of our birth. PAR pulled its support from this bill when the amendments were added to deny unconditional access to our information. We are completely against the notion that one citizen, a parent, should be able to dictate how the government can treat another citizen, the adult adoptee. This is essentially a Mother May I bill. Don't get me wrong, I'm ecstatic for the people who are receiving their information, and it is most of the adoptees who are requesting it. But we still have work to do. We're the only citizens in the state who cannot access a true copy of our original birth certificates except by court order, which is virtually impossible, simply because of the circumstances of our birth. As you may know, the Catholic Conference and the ACLU of Pennsylvania both opposed HB 162. Ironically, because both of them seem to equate adoption with abortion. The Catholic Church continues to spread the lie that giving adoptees unconditional access to our OBCs would increase abortion rates. If anything, they've gone down in states that give adoptees unconditional access. The ACLU believes that adoption should be treated like an abortion in terms of anonymity. They believe a mother's name should be kept a state secret from her child. And the problem with this is that an abortion is a medical procedure where HIPAA laws would apply. An adoption is a legal transfer of custody. That involves a living, breathing human being, presumably one with rights. So we've been used as pawns in the abortion war, essentially since 1985, and it continues, rather than being treated as human beings. Which begs the question, who is adoption for? If it's treated as a way to spirit a child away and lock away their original identities, we should rethink our priorities. Adoptees are fighting for the right to see a state-held document that directly pertains to them in its entirety, without restrictions. That's pretty basic. There's a reason FOIA and sunshine laws exist, because we know inherently that anything that operates in secret is bound to be corrupt. Keep in mind, there was never a legal promise made to birth parents that their names would be kept secret from their children. Such a promise was never included on relinquishment papers. The notion that people should be able to reproduce anonymously from their children and have that right protected by law is not only impossible for the state to guarantee, but it's not in the child's best interest. Even now that parents can redact their information from our birth certificates, it's still not a guarantee of anonymity. Adoptees can still find a birth parent's identity via DNA testing and a private detective or any other alternative method. It's not easy, but it can be done. I found my own paternal family via DNA testing. Yet secrecy in adoption is considered fair and just, even by the very institutions that profess to fight for our civil liberties. What could be more of a civil liberty than the ability to know who you are and who you came from? I would invite the ACLU and other civil rights groups to get on the right side of this issue so that we are able to push for unconditional access to our original birth certificates. The right to biological identity has only become more pressing as the first major wave of donor-conceived people are well into adulthood. It's disconcerting enough for an adoptee to wonder if they're marrying a biological relative. Imagine being donor-conceived and knowing you may have hundreds of siblings living in your same geographic area. Yet somehow the idea persists that people should be able to procreate anonymously from their children. Even under this new law, our rights still only exist under the permission of people who supposedly gave up all legal rights to us. We are still only allowed to exist to the extent that it's emotionally convenient for somebody else. I want to live to see the day that an individual's biological identity cannot be lawfully withheld by any government or private agency. PAR will continue to fight until the rights of adopted people are truly protected under the law. We won't stop advocating for this, and I won't stop until we see that happen in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. We appreciate your comments and comments on behalf of your organization. I did want to say, as we said, today is a day of celebration. As of, I believe, the 18th last week, 2,028 Pennsylvanians all across this country now know who we are, where we came from, and in some cases, who our mother may or father may be. Some of you have got new brothers, new sisters. Some young children have got grandmothers they didn't know they were going to have. I would encourage, if you have not read any of these boards, to please do that. Those are some testimonies for a couple individuals who have shared their stories with us. Remember, this legislation got passed in October 25, 2016, signed by the governor on the 5th of 2016, November. Thank you, Governor Wolf. We did invite the governor, but as you know, he's a busy man and was not able to be there. I know he's got a couple representatives here. And in November 3rd, 2017, 1 year later, the Department of Health started processing these birth certificates. Yes, there are a few who are not able to get them yet, but we believe this is a great start. And we believe, as we see these reunions going on, more and more are going to want to do this. I do want to share a couple comments with you before we close. You know, for a long time, through the 7.5 years I worked on this, I thought the fallacy was that a lot of people felt that only adoptees cared about this issue, and only adoptees wanted to know this. But the reality is there's as many birth parents where this is important to them. Some of them were encouraged, and sometimes aggressively encouraged, to put these children up for adoption. It may have happened at a time in their life where financially they couldn't sustain them, or they might be in the middle of college. But throughout their lives, they carried that same wonder those of us adoptees carried. Who was my mother? And they wanted to know where their child was. I'm going to share a couple quick quotes with you from individuals who couldn't be there, but I think it says it all. Dennis A. from North Carolina. Over 40 years of searching finally ended for me. The copy of my birth record arrived in my mailbox on my 71st birthday. Another quote from Kathy from Pennsylvania says, my birth mother died at 48 from adenoid carcinoma. This information is a great benefit for me to share with my physician and my children and their families. The benefit of being able to know your medical history is immeasurable. Another one says that at 77 years old, I finally know who I am, and it is totally liberating. That was Patricia from Virginia. Nora from Pennsylvania says life-changing, life-saving are appropriate words. There is a long, long line of breast cancer, lymphoma, and autoimmune diseases in my mother's side of the family. I need to know that. With today's technology, that's important to me. And the last quote is from Eddie in Delaware. It says, for the first time in almost 68 years, I know who I am, and it's hard to put into words how much this means to me. Some of our speakers said it best. I think Matthew talked about having that hole in his heart healed up. Today is a celebration. We've made great progress. We've opened that door of information for individuals, and we let them become more whole. But more importantly, I feel like I've adopted a new family. The groups that have come in to see us, the hugs from people I didn't even know, it's like the best day I've had in the legislature in 20 years. But I have to tell you a quick story with my staff, because 2 weeks ago we were talking about this event, and I said to them, seldom as a legislator do you pass a lot of stuff that you think really impacts somebody's life. If you get 2 or 3 bills where you think are life changers or did something positive in someone's life, you feel like you're successful. Matter of fact, I have a placard hanging in my office from my good friend Senator Hutchinson, and he uses as a barometer before he votes on things, and it says, will this legislation improve the lives of Pennsylvanians? I said to my staff, I think that's what this is about, and you should be very proud that House Bill 162 has become a life changer for some of those people. It wasn't 3 minutes later, and a big fellow walked in my door along with another friend and said, I want to meet you. And it was our new friend, Marcus. Marcus lives in this area. His mother's from New York. And he said, I wanted to thank you for Christmas. You gave me my mother. Marcus is a 46-year-old adoptee that day who lost both of his adoptive parents. And he said to me, when he told his son that this was happening, his son, who's 12, said, does this now mean I have a grandmother? Think about all the systemic impacts that one piece of paper had. We were delighted on the 17th of this month to have Marcus and his mother join us in our office. And his mother came down to visit Marcus to celebrate his first and 47th birthday. His first birthday with her and 47th birthday here on this planet. They even went to the hospital where she conceived him. What an absolute successful story and tremendous testimony. Before I close out, again, I want to thank my staff for all the work they've put into this. Again, I want to thank Katie in the governor's office, Parker Bean and Emily Holliday, as well as Neil Milady in the Department of Health and their liaisons. I know I've driven them crazy. They probably can't wait till the day I say I'm retiring. Joe Ellen and staff at Vital Records, I know we've driven you crazy. And Greg Grassa, you've been a great help, and your chairwoman, Catherine Watson. But the one final thank yous that I want to take the liberty of saying, and I believe I say this on behalf of all the adoptees sitting here, goes to our birth mothers. And that thank you for the choice that they made. Whether it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 43, 56, there's 2 of us at 56. And our mothers were put up in a situation of great challenge. Some had a father with them and some didn't. But to all those mothers, we say thank you. And to our adoptive parents, now some of you know I was one of 4 adopted children, and I actually learned my mother's name 9 months after my father passed away. Both my adopted parents passed away 2 years ago, within 30 days of each other. My brother found some birth records. And in those, it was actually just a bill for the doctor, the attorney, and some postpartum care for my mother. As my mother said, it was a street-side adoption. She didn't even know there was anything in the bundle of blankets when they got me. But I looked at the 3 different bills my father paid. My father never made a lot of money. He sure made a lot less than 62. And I was thinking about this man who chose to bring 4 children in his house and used his money to pay the doctor, pay some of my mother's medical bills, and pay the attorney. What a generous man. Generous. And then the Lord blessed them 4 years later and gave them one of their own. So thank you to all our mothers, to our adoptive parents who took us in and gave us homes that we could never have dreamed of. We are grateful, and for those loving parents who encouraged us to go on to this. Before I close, I think I probably have to do something because it's driving the people behind me crazy. This is my birth record that I got in December 15th. My newfound friends think I'm a Looney Tune because I never opened it. I can't even tell you why I didn't open it. But this battle to get House Bill 162 together and passed was not about me. It was about these wonderful people that I have met. Didn't even get to meet in person, but I heard from. It was about a gentleman that I met who served, I can't remember if it was Korea or Vietnam. And he said, you know, Kerry, he was in his 70s, I was plucked out of high school, sent over to a country to take care of and to provide democracy for people I didn't even know, only to come back to my own country and be told I can't have a copy of my own original birth certificate. So in your honor, I will open this. I've been carrying it around for a month. Wow. It says I haven't gotten any taller in 56 years. My mother's name was Lavina, and she was 40 when she had me. Probably not easy challenge. My father's information is not there. I was born on January 14th, so obviously I'm celebrating the right birth dates. And ironically, I had a name. For many years, I was just baby boy 11462. My name was Stephen John. And my adoptive father's name was John. So today we celebrate. Thanks for forcing me to open up, not carried around for another month. God bless you guys. Have a great day.